better than two.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Richard Tharpe, and this is the first of many of what I'll do when I said I ran for office for County Commission here, District 3 in Catoosa County. I said one of the things I'd like to do is bring a little more transparency to the office and a little more dialogue with the citizens. And so what I figured is I would do it this way instead of things like town halls or other things, because I felt like it was a little more personal and you could watch it at your convenience, but you could kind of get a little bit more insight from me, your county commissioner here in District 3, on the meeting we just had. Today is Friday, as my wife calls it, just snowpocalypse. So I'm down here today because we had nothing better to do. We're not going anywhere. Stay off the roads. I'm sure everybody did. So we're down here and I'm going to dialogue with you and kind of give you some thoughts of the meeting that we just had here on Tuesday and let you understand my thought process, the reasoning, the things we voted on, why they were important, and what we did to kind of move the county forward. And that's kind of how this will go from here on out. And so when I put these up, one of the things I'll say is, in the comments of the video that when we put them out, please put comments for questions and things like that. In the next episode I'll revisit this episode, look at the comments, and then we'll be able to go back and answer some questions from you, the citizens, because I think involvement from you is very important. And this is a great way for you to kind of ask questions and do things on your timetable. It's just a lot easier, in my opinion. So we met Tuesday, the 7th, and we had a pretty healthy agenda. And a lot of things we voted on were just things we have to vote on each year to keep the county running. It's just a law that we have to do things for the tax commissioner where he can accept payments. And so the real, it's just things that are customary to do, and they're just kind of something you'll see every year. But we had some things that we voted on that were, as you saw if you watched the meeting, and if you didn't, please, you can go back and watch that. There's plenty of different ways to do that. There is one that Nick Ware does. It's CSI, which is Citizens Sharing Information. It's a Facebook page, and Nick kind of puts up the pictures and things to kind of help you follow along. You can go to the county website as well and pull up the BOC meeting, and you can watch it that way. It's live streamed. So to start off, we basically went through the agenda. We basically, here again, we had a VOCA grant, and basically that grant was for the victim advocacy. It's a grant that basically helps that to function, and it's our state's court solicitor that does that. So anyway, we went through and we re-upped, I guess you could say, for that grant this year to keep that grant money coming in to help the victims advocacy to keep going. The next one, same thing. We had an LMIG. So LMIG, they like to throw that out there, and it's a grant, essentially, that helps us pave our roads. So the state gives us money to pave some roads every year, and it's a grant that we get. And so what our roads department did, and Buster and Alex presented at the meeting, or Alex did, but Buster was there, and in our work session, which I'll talk about as well, talked to us about what that does and how they grade roads. So for me, being a new commissioner, like a lot of you folks, there's things I don't know, but I want to know. So one of the things I asked Buster and Alex was, how do we figure out what roads get paved with this grant? How do we grade these roads to know, hey, these are the 4 roads that we want to do? And so they have a grading scale. They go out in the county and they do this over a 3-year period, and then they start over again. They grade every road in the county. Now, these 4 roads that were identified on the grant were roads that 2 of them were, here, I can give you the roads here. We had Loving Good Road, which starts at Ottawa-Ringgold Road. So it's here in District 3, and it runs basically right when you come over the railroad tracks. A lot of you folks that are familiar with that area, that's where the rock quarry is. And it follows and almost shadows Ottawa-Ringgold Road, and then it comes right back down at Saunders Road and goes over the tracks. So I rode that road. I made it a point to ride all of these roads. It was 1.25 miles, this road was. And the county has done a good job patching the road through the years to kind of carry it along. But it's now going to be paved. And all these roads will be paved in the summer of 2025. You can't pave roads in the wintertime. The asphalt plants aren't working. You want that road to bond and adhere correctly. And so doing it in cold temperatures is never a good idea. The second road was Cottonwood Mill Road, and it's a half a mile of road, and it starts at the beginning of Dogwood Valley Road, and it's going to end at the county line. So when I went that way, I kind of went down through into Tunnel Hill and then came back up. But, the road was, I call it alligatoring. You could see all the cracks in the road, but it hadn't had a lot of patching, but it was at the point where it's going to start having potholes and things of such. And then Thompson Hill Road, which begins at Bandy Road and then goes to West Addis Road, and that's 0.82 miles. That road's getting done. And the last one is Conjure Road, and that's it's going to begin at Keith Road, and then it goes to the dead end. And I will say Conjure Road there in District 4 was by far the worst of these 4 roads. So it is definitely well overdue to get done. So that was one of the items we've got done. We just had to approve and vote to get that grant that we need for the LMIG for the roads. One of the things I'll say, obviously, today's the 10th. I'm new. I ask a lot of questions. And that's intentional at the meetings. I want to know, not just for my benefit, but for your benefit, why some of these things happen. So if you watch the meetings, you'd notice that I would ask questions, and I'll get to this in a minute, from our Parks and Rec Administrator, Alex, about this piece of equipment that he's going to purchase. What's the benefit? Because that's, at the end of the day, if we're going to spend money, it's great and it's needed. But for the citizens and for myself, what's the benefit? Why do we need this? So I ask a lot of questions in the meeting, and I don't ask them necessarily for my benefit as well, because I've probably asked this question before the meeting, but I want to ask it again, so you, the citizens, get to hear what I asked when I asked the question. So that brought us to this next one. So we're going to purchase, it's called a VentTrak 4520. And I'll put this up on the screen. I'll send it to my guy that's going to edit this so you can see what this piece of equipment looks like. But, for me, I played golf my whole life up until I couldn't anymore, So you'd see these on the golf course. They're reel mowers. Now, the great thing with this VentTrak is you can put different attachments on it. And that's one of the things that Alex, to his credit, he said for years he has been told by his employees that he needs this piece of equipment, but he was kind of hesitant because he was kind of getting by with what he had. And he just, it was like the cost didn't weigh the benefit. But what happens is he noticed that the field conditions were getting as such that there was multiple different types of things that were going to be needed for infield or for the grass or for things that needed to be done. And so Alex felt like this was the time, because of the way this piece of equipment operates. You can attach different pieces onto the front of the VentTrak. And the first one was that reel mower. And so I asked him, I said, well, what's the benefit for a reel mower? And he said, well, the way it cuts the grass is right now we use a zero-turn mower. And so that zero-turn mower, it's like when you get you cut your hair with some rusty scissors, it doesn't cut the ends real well. So it doesn't allow for healthy, your hair doesn't grow back right. So he said, listen, the VentTrak with this reel mower, he said one of the things it'll do is it'll cut the hair precisely, or the grass, and that'll allow the grass to be healthier, the root system to be stronger. And so what that does for us too is it doesn't, it follows the contours of the ground, where the mower does that with the tires. So it'll cut it with the contours. It'll allow it to be healthier. So what happens is the grass is healthier, the roots are stronger. So when the kids are playing on it, there's not as many things on the field where they can slip, or there's places where the grass gets tore up as easy because the root system's stronger, and it allows for a healthier field, which gives a better product for the kids. But more importantly, and this is the most important thing for me, it ends up being a safer field for the kids to play on. And that's always a benefit. So he's got 2 attachments that he has with this proposal and this bid, and it was a little over $60,000. And the other one was an aerator, where you have to take and punch the holes in the ground and rehabilitate the root system every year to keep the grass healthy. And so that was a second attachment he's got along with this bid. So long story short, it was something that they've got. And one of the questions I asked him in the meeting is this a piece of equipment you can carry to all of our facilities? It's not just for a specific facility, say like Jack Maddox. And he said, absolutely. This goes everywhere in the county. We'll haul this to every field in the county. We'll be able to mow every field, and we'll be able to get the same results countywide. And then Chuck Harris had a great comment. He said, so the zero turns you use now, you'll be able to free those up now, and we'll be buying less zero turns because we'll be putting less hours, and we can put these over in other departments, which in turn will save us money over here. So I thought that was a great comment by Chuck to talk about how not only is this piece of equipment great for our fields, but it's also going to save the county money in other areas. So kind of return on investment. The next one, anybody that watched last year's meetings, we talked about the facility usage agreement for the Parks and Rec Department. Now, this was probably one of the longer meetings that we had seen in our commission, and this was our prior commission in November, that when Alex first came to present this, and Alex spoke for probably an hour and 20 minutes on this usage agreement. And what Alex was basically saying is what we have in place is fine, but there's 3 areas we really need to focus on to make some adjustments. And the first one, which was almost a no-brainer to me, is well, the way it's written now, if a director comes and wants to sign up to use our fields, they have to sign that contract, and Alex then has to get that to the Board of Commissioners, and we have to sign them. And that kind of slows things down. And any kind of business, speed is kind of where it's at. You want to be able to keep the wheel turning, so to speak. So Alex said, hey, it'd be great if me as the Parks and Rec director can go ahead and facilitate these contracts and sign them and keep things moving. And so I thought that was a no-brainer, no problem. The next 2 things, though, were the 2 things that kind of bogged it down last time. And it came to our cancellation policy. So what Alex articulated the first meeting in November that he brought this up to is we had some issues where folks would schedule a tournament, and he takes and opens enrollment up in the spring, and folks call in, and these tournament directors call, and they reserve fields pretty much for the whole year. And he said, what we're seeing, though, is we've got folks that are canceling on us, and our current cancellation policy is they have till 5:30 on Monday, the weekend before the tournament, to call and say, hey, we're not going to need to use your fields. And Alex said, hey, look, when you look at something like Camp Jordan, their cancellation policy is 30 days out. If you don't cancel within 30 days out, there's a penalty attached. And he said, we really don't, 1, have a penalty if they cancel late, and 2, we kind of getting where we have a lot of late cancellations. And so what that does for his department, he said, is, we go out and buy concession goods, hot dog buns, things of this nature, and we buy those on Tuesday or Wednesday. If somebody cancels late on a Wednesday or a Thursday, we now have something that's a consumable good that if it doesn't get consumed, it goes bad. We can't carry this forward to the next week. So it's costing the county money. He said, then we have employees that we schedule for that weekend, and they're part-time employees to work at the fields over the weekend, and we're canceling on them late. So, anybody that's had a job understands that you don't want to be told on a Wednesday, Thursday that, hey, now we're not going to need you this weekend. It's hard for him to retain employees when you have these kinds of things happening. So Alex said, I really want to put a little bit of teeth to the cancellation policy. I think we need to put a financial penalty on them to do that. And so that's kind of where things bogged down last time, because there was different ideas about how that should happen. But one of the things that came up, and we had a work session, so let me drop out for a second and talk about our work session. One of the things that we decided as a commission, and this was something that Chairman Henry spearheaded, he said, hey, I want to have work sessions 30 minutes before our meetings to kind of go through the agenda, talk to these department heads ahead of time, and kind of get a feel for what things are going to go on the agenda and be talked about in the meeting. If we have any questions, we can do that. And so we did that this time, and I was appreciative. Me and a new commissioner, it kind of helped me to understand the process a little bit better, talk to these department heads ahead of time, and ask questions of them. And so Alex, during that session, one of the things that was brought up was the fact that it was misunderstood the last time it came up by Charlie in District 4, who said, hey, I thought that if we canceled, or if somebody canceled let's say I reserved 8 fields and I cancel 4 of those fields. It was misunderstood that meant he would have to pay the penalty for those 4 fields that he canceled on. And what came out was no, that won't be the way it will be. We're only going to put the penalty on somebody who cancels for all the fields. And that changed Charlie's perception of the whole thing as far as, okay, I just misunderstood. And he said that makes more sense for folks that are doing this. So he said in that world, there can be times where some teams drop out, and we do have fewer numbers. And so there's a little bit of things that you can't control from that side. So that got flushed out in a work session. I think a work session's great to talk. I encourage citizens, if you're coming to a 6 o'clock meeting, come to the 5:30 and watch the work session, because that's where you really get to see things kind of happen there real time and things that kind of get flushed out. And I asked Buster in that when Buster did not speak, if you watch the main meeting, but Buster with our roads department spoke at the work session. And I was able to ask him, well, where are our roads for our county right now on a schedule? And he said, we're probably about on a 30-year schedule. And what that means is if we stayed on that schedule right now, it would take 30 years to pave every road in the county. And like Buster said, look, we know the average road is 20 years. He said some get used more. They may have a 15-year lifespan. Some get used less, and they're in rural areas. They may last 25 years. Some may last a little longer. But if you average them out, it's 20 years. And so Buster said, but we've got a good plan in place, and we're getting to 20 years. We're getting there. And obviously these roads with the LMIG project help us do that. And as a commission, we're already talking about that as well, on keeping that aggressive road schedule to get us on a 20 year so we have better roads in the county. So those are things that get talked about in the work session, and I think that's a great thing. So I'd encourage you, if you're coming to a meeting, come 30 minutes early. We're going to do the work sessions, and they'll announce those just like we announce the others. And you can come watch a little bit more than maybe you would catch in the actual meeting. So Alex talked about those things. And so Charlie in District 4 recused himself. Now, in the last meeting, Charlie didn't recuse himself, and because Charlie used to be one of those folks that scheduled, he rented fields and did ball teams and ball tournaments. And so, he said, hey, back in June, I sold that business. I'm really not doing that actively anymore. I do sit here and still participate a little bit. But he said, look, from a perception standpoint, it's best if I just step out on this and let you guys handle it. But he was involved in the work session, which was great. And he got things answered that really changed his perception from when we had the meeting in November. So I thought that was great. I thought everything went through there. I asked Alex, and if you saw the meeting, I said, hey, is this going to solve all your problems? And he said, yes. I mean, basically, we're not going to be the stiffest penalty people in town. He said, but this should curtail the folks that have kind of been abusing the system, so to speak. And if you go back and watch the November meeting, just to give a little more context, what Alex said was some tournament directors will book all the fields in the surrounding area, Camp Jordan, here in Catoosa, Rossville, wherever. He said, and what they do is they do that because they feel like they don't want to have any competition. Now, they know they probably won't need all those fields. He said, but if they wait till the last minute to cancel, then they know there's not enough time for another tournament director to come in and take those fields that are now available and put a tournament together, which would have competition against them. And so we felt like, okay, so we've got some, what I would call gaming the system going on. And that's what Alex was trying to eliminate. He's trying to protect our county. We'll work with the Parks and Rec Department for years to come to try to get our fields and our facilities to be some of the best around. He talked about that in the last meeting, how Whitfield County has turf fields. Camp Jordan's looking at that as well to do turf fields. And that's a whole different discussion for another day. But at the end of the day, that was one of the reasons he tried to change this agreement. We need to take these habitual offenders and get them out of our county business where we could put a little teeth to it, where if they did book and they did cancel at the last minute, there's a financial penalty attached to that. So the county's not out any money. Obviously Alex knows because he tracks his business. He's a great Parks and Rec director. he tracks and he knows who these offenders are, because if you're watching, you'd be like me, well, why can't we just deal with them on a one-on-one basis? Well, he does. When this year's schedule came out, he's going to look at the performance of those folks that booked our fields last year and say, hey, you booked for 10 weekends. And out of those 10 weekends, if you canceled 4 of the 10, then you're somebody that really probably is not good for our business. And Alex does a good job with that. But like anything else, you have sometimes they'll change things around, and now all of a sudden, instead of this person that's the one that was doing it, they've come over here and now this person's booking it, and we're not as familiar with this person, and it's basically the same people and revolving door. And Alex did the best thing he could for our department, and I appreciate Alex and his staff for all the long hours it took to write this up. So that ended that one. And then that just put us right into our next items. And here again, these are the items I was talking about. Proposed resolution authorizing the tax commissioner to accept checks and other forms of payment. That's something that comes up every year. We've got to renew that every year. And so these are just the resolutions to do that. So we went through the resolutions, and then it brought us to proposed approval to opt in to House Bill 581. Now this one, I'm very proud of us as a commission, because it was a 5-0 vote to stay opt-in to House Bill 581. So anybody who may not be familiar with House Bill 581, you voted on it in November if you went to the polls. And we had record turnout in Catoosa County at the polls. So we had about 76% of registered voters voted. And out of those, 74% said we want tax relief on our property taxes. That's what House Bill 581 was. It's for your property taxes. And so what the first part of this bill does is, by you voting 74%, January the 1st, this went into effect. And what this does, brief explanation, because a lot of folks have heard this over and over. If you are a homestead exempt property, if you own a house in Catoosa County, and I do want to speak about this really quick too, because there's a lot of confusion out there on this. If you have homestead exemption on your property, how can you get homestead exemption? If you live in a house that you own, you can go down to the tax assessor's office, or excuse me, the tax assessor's office, where you go do your tag and your title work. You can go down there and tell them you want to file for homestead exemption. You have till April 1st of this year, 2025, to go do it if you have not done it. And it allows you an exemption on your property taxes. So it helps you save money. So what House Bill 581 did was, as we've seen in the last few years, everybody's property values have gone up dramatically. And House Bill 581 was designed to say, hey, what we're going to do is we're going to do it a little differently. Instead of us going off assessed values, in other words, if your house was worth $200,000 and we said it was worth 30% more this year, so now we're assessing you at $260,000, we're not going to do it based on that 30%. Your assessment will still be there. Your house would still be assessed at that $260,000. But what will happen is, let's say inflation for that year was 3%. And that's about an average of what inflation runs if you look at it over a long period of time. So what you would do is you would take $200,000, 3%, that's $206,000. So you would have a $24,000 exemption. We assessed it at $230,000, but we're only going to tax you at $206,000. So House Bill 581 gave that to you if you have a homestead exempt property. One of the things that's been misunderstood out there about this is you have to go, folks have been online and said, hey, I think you've got to go reapply. You've got to go back down and tell them you want to opt into this bill. You want to have this on there. That is not correct. If you already have a homestead exemption on your property, this automatically clicks in for you. You don't have to do anything. If you have a home that you live in and you own, and you have not filed for homestead exemption, I implore you to go down and do that by April 1st, because this is a huge savings to you. I talked to our local tax assessor, and Ashley is his name. Ashley Bailey, he said, look, I would love to present something to everybody to show what a difference is in just 2%. He said, listen, inflation averages 3%. 5%, if you look over time, is probably where the assessments average. That just 2% over a period of time adds up to a huge savings for you, the citizens. So House Bill 581 gave that to you. We heard you loud and clear. unanimously, we passed that, and we didn't have to do anything. It was already in effect. All we wanted to do is state the fact that, hey, we're not opting out, because that was an option. So we stayed in. We gave that to you because you wanted it, and we heard you. Now, there is a second part to this that will be coming along. We have to wait. The school board also this week, coincidentally, they met, and the school board did not opt out of that as well. Okay. Unfortunately, with the second part of the bill, there's no relief from your school tax, which is probably 3/4 of your bill. Okay. But what we're seeing on this is there's the second phase of this. If the two cities, Ringgold and Fort Oglethorpe, follow suit with the school board and the county, and they say, hey, we're not going to opt out either, we're going to let this bill stay in place that people want, then we have the ability to go to the polls and vote on up to 1 cent added to our sales tax. So currently, everybody knows Catoosa County 7%. So if we put this, eventually it'll go on a ballot. You will go to the polls and vote on this. If you decide that we want to have 1 cent added, that 1 cent will go strictly towards, and 100% towards your city and county tax portion of your bill. So easy example, if you had $1,000 bill and let's say $700 was school tax and $300 was city, county, or just county, that penny would go toward that $300 of your bill. Now, it won't eat all that $300 up right away, but based on the projections of what that penny does, it'll eventually, down the line, take care of 100% of that portion of your bill. So in that example, down the line, you would lose 30% of your tax bill, which is relief. Unfortunately, the bill, the way it's written, it doesn't do anything for your school portion. I'm sure that'll be looked at down the line, because everybody knows taxes went crazy the last 2 years. We're all feeling it, but this is a first step in getting something done. The exemption is in place for the county. So if you're a county resident and you don't have any city tax on your bill, you've got this now. We'll talk about the penning later. So I thought that was a great thing as well when we did that. Moving on, here again, okay, yeah. So the next one was the appointment of vice chairman. This got a little harder than it should have been. So give a little background on, first thing is, what does a vice chairman do? So we have a chairman. In the chairman's position, Stephen Henry is our chairman now. That's voted on countywide. And then we have 4 commissioners, 1, 2, 3, and 4 in those districts. And like with me in District 3 folks in Ringgold, Graysville, and the area District 3 encompasses, voted, and I'm their commissioner. So chairman presides over the meeting. So what's the difference between a chairman and, say, District 3 commissioner or any other commissioner? Well, the chairman presides over the meetings. They run the meetings. They run the meetings that you see. They run the meetings in executive session that we have when we deal with employee or land or legal matters. So that's the main difference. Obviously, they get voted on countywide. So, that's a big deal in not a small district. But chairman runs the meeting. So what does a vice chair do? That was my first thing, is what does a vice chairman do? Well, a vice chairman is just there in case the chairman is not able to be at a meeting and preside over a meeting. The vice chair would run the meeting. That's simple as that. We have 4 folks typically that sign the checks for anything that goes out of the county. And the chairman and the vice chairman are on the bank accounts to be able to do that, along with the CFO and I want to say assistant CFO. I'm sure that's not correct, but it's pretty correct. And so there's redundancies there where there's always 2 folks needed to sign a check. And so when you have these 4 folks in line, there's always that there. And so if the chairman was out and the assistant CFO was out with the flu, you've still got a vice chair and the CFO that could sign checks. Keeps the county running. That's it. There's no other perks or things that come along with that. So the way it has been talked about in the past is it rotated districts every 2 years. There's a lot of paperwork that gets involved when you have to sign to be on bank accounts and things of that nature. So they decided it was in the best of the county's interest to do it every 2 years, to have a vice chair every 2 years, not do it yearly. And Chuck Harris has been vice chair probably about 3 years now. And Chuck was vice chair because it was rotating every 2 years. But as a lot of folks know in Catoosa County, our chairman left to go run for state senate. And when that happened, this was a perfect example of why you have a vice chair. Until we elected another chairman, which ended up being Larry Black, Chuck Harris, being vice chair, took over and ran the meetings. So it was continuity in government. It was great. So with that in mind, it was District 3, they said's turn. And I just didn't feel like me being the new guy. We've got Jeff Long, who's the longest tenured commissioner. Chuck Harris has been in for 6 years. Charlie's been in for 6 years. And Stephen served 6 years, and now he's back. But here I am. I've never chaired a meeting. I've never even been in a meeting until this last Tuesday. I didn't feel like it was in the best interest of the county for the rookie to potentially have to step in and run a meeting. I watched Angie Teams in Walker County, their brand new chairperson, run a meeting. And listen, she made a few faux pas, right? And that's to be expected. She's brand new. She's got to learn the procedures. If you watch the meeting, Stephen Henry, who had done that job for 6 years, he had a few things he fumbled on because he's got to get back going again as well. That just reaffirmed to me that why would we want to have somebody with no experience running meetings potentially if something happened and our chairman wasn't able to make a meeting? I just think it needs to be seamless, and we need to run county government, focus on the important things. So the first motion got made by Chuck that it would go to Jeff Long. Let's start back over and we'll vote on it in 2 years because Jeff just got reelected. And, that motion with the voting piece, I don't like voting on the bench. Charlie said it, and I kind of agree. It shouldn't be a popularity contest, in my opinion. This is just my opinion. I think we should all do what's best for the citizens, and I can guarantee you that's what we all five think every day is what's best for the citizens. But in this situation where it may not be that way, if you have a different set of board here in 2 years, let's say, because we've got elections for 2 seats in 2 years, I never want it to be a popularity contest. I think it should always just be we all get to serve the citizens. And it just so happened that it was District 3's turn, and I'm the new commissioner. So the first one Chuck put up, they had that voting piece in it. I just didn't feel comfortable with that. It died, as they say, because it couldn't get a second and get voted on. Then Charlie came and said, well, hey, I vote that, basically, we just keep it in a rotating fashion and it goes to District 3. Here again, I didn't think that was best for the citizens. And so I'm sorry, first of all, that this, it should have been smoother than it was. And I know some folks said, well, hey, you should have just taken it. It's not about me. When I ran, one of the things I told every one of you is it's always what's best for the county as a whole, not a small group or an individual. So for me to take vice chair, being the rookie, to me, I almost viewed that as something for an individual. And it's just never what I'm about. So what ended up being decided is we're going to start over with District 1, our longest tenured commissioner in Jeff Long. And in 2 years, it will go back to District 2. Now, let's just say, and we'll look at the rotation, but let's just say in 2 years that Commissioner Harris decided not to run and that seat was someone new. Well, at that point, I'd have 2 years in there. I would be open, along with Charlie and along with Jeff, maybe keeping it, to take it at that point. But I think it's always what's best for the county. And I didn't feel like me as a rookie, I should take it. So that one got fumbled a lot more than it should have. But I think, if we'd have had a little more time in the work session, we would have flushed that out. And then the meeting would have been even shorter, and it would have been something that would have been pretty easy. I think at the end of the day, everybody's happy with the way it is. All five commissioners are, happy the fact that we're just going to look at it and we're going to go ahead and go with Jeff. And hey, listen, if something happened and Chairman Henry wasn't there, listen, Jeff Long is more than capable to step in and run a meeting because he is the longest tenured commissioner. So that's great. And that's what our county government should always do. Smooth, functioning, let's get things done. And so that brought us to just a few more things. Approval of signers of the bank accounts once the vice chairman was decided on, approval of a technologies invoice, and then the financial report for the county, which if anybody watching the financial report for the county, our county's in great shape. We took in more, we spent a little less. So at the end of the day, our fund balance, which a fund balance essentially is, we've got a reserve account. people call it a lot of different things. People call it rainy day fund. They call it all different types of things. But essentially what it is we've got 6 months worth of money sitting there that if something like the tornado event that happened in Ringgold, anything that happened and we had to have reserve funds immediately on hand, Catoosa County has it. We have it to step in and bridge the gap and keep the government running. We don't have to go borrow money. And here again, that's something the taxpayers would have to pay interest on. The county has the money sitting there. So when she went over the financials are great. And with that, that was pretty much the end of the meeting. So look, at the end of the day, we did some great things. Happy about this first meeting. As of today, I'm 10 days in office. I'm still getting my feet very wet. And today, it's the snowpocalypse going on, so it's easy to get your feet a little wet today. One thing I'll tell you all is my job every day is to look at ways to make the county better. I ask a lot of questions. I'm always open to folks. That's why I'm doing this. I want you to understand why I voted on things at the meeting, or we can have questions asked in the comments. I can come back next time, answer those questions, and dialogue with you, the citizens. I think you need to be involved. I think you need to have insight into what's going on and have accessibility to me as your commissioner and all the other commissioners on the board as well. I look forward to serving. One of the things that really excites me is we have a great county. We just have to continue to look at ways to keep pushing forward that are innovative. I don't think we ever should get complacent on where we're at. One of the things you know about me, I'm on the set of Sweet Home Catoosa right now, my podcast that I do. I want to get information into the community. I want to bring people in that you may not know, that I may not know that well, and we get to know them together, and they bring information about what they do for our county. For topics of things. I've got my next podcast that'll be coming out here very shortly, and it's talking about fluoride in the water because City of Ringgold was talking about that, and I thought that, hey, I need to learn more about that, and so here we go. I'm hoping Ashley for our tax assessors board will come on here as well and talk to you, the citizens, about things that we all have questions about. And that's me. That's just who I am. I want to talk to you, get you information, and share things with you. So thank you for watching. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you in, it'll be 3 weeks. Our meeting is going to be postponed a week, and we'll talk about that. But it's, the meeting was on a Tuesday. It was the day after Martin Luther King Day. County government's shut down on a Monday. So there's a lot of things that go into things. But we have 2 meetings a month. Real quick, I'll say Walker County, our neighboring county, decided they'd go to 1 meeting a month. And here again, they thought that was what was best for their government. I'm proud that we decide that we're going to meet twice a month. And even with that, we have work sessions. So we're actually doing a little more than we have in the past here in Catoosa County. We're not just having those 2 meetings a month, but having a work session before where you, the citizens, can get a little more involved in the government. And I think that's always important. That's what you want. It's what I want. And I always said I want to govern the way I want to be governed. And I think we're off to a good start. So thanks for watching. And until next time, have a great week.